Alright, where do I start? I just got done basically watching all that Comic-Con had to offer in terms of basically all that Comic-Con had to offer on Assassin's Creed 4 in terms of its gameplay. I watched the interview with GameSpot, where they were talking about how they rented out a ship from England and basically held this little exhibit on it, where it's basically like a little mini pirate version of a Renaissance fair. And in addition to that, I watched a 13-minute gameplay video where basically the main character, Edward, not Edward Cullen, thank God, but Edward Kenway, that's it, Kenway. He fulfills an assassination contract in this little fishing village, where he assassinates two brothers, one of which flees, so he has to chase that brother down and engage him in a naval battle, and then kind of go after this treasure map, and kind of get this blueprint treasure in this Mayan temple. So, on the surface, it looks pretty cool. I mean, honestly, this game looks, just based on what they've shown, it looks really, really good. But for a variety of reasons, I'm kind of hesitant to get overly excited about it, because Assassin's Creed has burned me before. Namely with its last three main games, the Revelations, Assassin's Creed 3, and Assassin's Creed Liberation. I mean, Liberation was boring, but it's not like 3 and Revelations were bad. It's just that they weren't nearly as good as the developers were making them out to be. I mean, they basically showed off all these cool features via gameplay videos, and were boasting about how you have all this freedom and all this immersion in this historical period, and then it turned out to be hindered by either linearity or an unengaging story. In the case of Revelations, I didn't really I like Revelations better than 3, oddly enough, but Revelations dealt with the it was basically in Constantinople with the Ottoman Empire, which that was never really a period I was too interested in. I know I'm going to get flack for that, but I was never really that interested in the Byzantines. I was somewhat interested in the colonial times, which is really where the disappointment with 3 began. Because 3, I hated the characters. I hated Connor. I hated Achilles slightly less than Connor. And I actually kind of liked the villain, Haytham Kenway, Connor's dad. He had more charisma than Connor. I mean, when you played as him in the beginning and then switched over to Connor, I'm like, can I just go back to the other guy? But with Assassin's Creed 4, it honestly looks like a really good game. I mean, it definitely looks like the biggest game of the series, basically giving you, if not the entirety of the Caribbean, then most of it to roam around in. I mean, it's first of all, the first problem I have with it, I know this might have something to do with the real world geography. I mean, maybe the Caribbean is really like this. I've never actually been there firsthand, but a lot of the islands that you pass by seem to just be rocks. I mean, these big rocks with trees on top. I mean, there are civilized locations like I said, the fishing village, and I think Tortuga was in one of the demos a while back. But I hope it gets kind of more variety. Maybe you can go to this kind of English port, and or kind of raid this British outpost or whatever. I mean, I hope you can do stuff like that. But as for the gameplay itself, the core of it remains true to the formula in the sense that when Edward Kenway moves, he moves like all the other Assassin's Creed characters. I mean, there's really no difference in how you control the guy, or at least not a significant difference. I mean, he still has the hood. I mean, he still kind of stands out, but to be fair, they do kind of try to blend the traditional white hooded assassin with the kind of pirate wardrobe that's fitting for the times. He still has a hood, but he has all this kind of basically he looks all this kind of Jack Sparrow gear on. So he doesn't really look ridiculous. He doesn't look like Connor. I really hated Connor. But basically the demo showed off the seamless transition from on land platforming to the naval combat, which we got kind of a prototype of in Assassin's Creed 3. And unlike Assassin's Creed 3, where you actually have to go through a loading screen and the illusion is kind of broken with that, this you can actually just walk onto your ship, push one button when you're at the steering wheel, and then you're steering your ship. So that is a significant improvement. And also, unlike Assassin's Creed 3, you can actually free roam the sea. Assassin's Creed 3, the only time you can pilot, you can control your ship and actually partake in the naval gameplay was in a mission. True, you could replay the missions, but I would like to take my ship out for a spin. Just, I don't know, just saying. I mean, I'd like to have some free roaming naval combat, but to be fair, Assassin's Creed 4 looks like it has that. I mean, they showed off the map, which is indeed very big. There's, I think they said over 50 locations to visit. How varied those locations are, I'm not sure of yet, because they only showed off like 2. And they also have these kind of 75... They said they always wanted to have something for the player to interact with. Always something for the player to do. And that's a bold move, especially for a world this big. I mean, this is like Skyrim level world. I mean, this is a huge world. But the thing with Skyrim is that any of the Elder Scrolls games, really, Elder Scrolls actually gave you a lot more room to customize your character and your playstyle. But I can't really complain too much, because if you don't like any of the Assassin's Creed games, you're not going to go out and buy Assassin's Creed 4. I mean, if you don't like the gameplay of Assassin's Creed, then you've basically given up after one game. It's not really a continuing lesson that you have to learn. But basically, the naval combat they've somewhat expanded upon. I mean, you can use your front guns to kind of slow down your ship by aiming for their mast. You can, and once you actually catch up to the enemy ship, you can you have a variety of projectiles. You can either aim for their masts, you could aim for their hull. And the developers said, the game director said that there are many different types of ships like galleons and man-of-wars, but again, we only saw one. So, and he basically said that if you're going to tackle a man-of-war, you really need to customize your own ship to really be a force to be reckoned with. And that's another thing. Customizing Edward and customizing the ship sounds cool on paper, but how deep they actually go into it is yet to be seen. I mean, at first glance, I don't know what it's called, but the ship you get in Assassin's Creed 4 looks kind of like a more run-down version of the ship you get in Assassin's Creed 3. Which is ironic because 4 is a prequel, but whatever. And once you actually take down the enemy ship's masts, you can either board or just sink them. And what I found kind of disappointing is that at least in the gameplay video that I saw, the player wasn't really aiming for the masts. I mean, it was just aiming in the general direction of the ship. I realize you don't really have a lot of room to aim your cannons on a pirate ship, but if the game is giving you some form of aiming device, some sort of crosshairs, it makes more sense to strategize where exactly you want to hit the enemy ship. If you want to sink it, then you aim for its hull. I mean, but if you want to board it and basically cripple it, you aim for its masts. That was not... I did not see that in the gameplay video because there was... As far as the gameplay video told me, you just aim for its masts. And its hull and its mast... No, you aim for its hull and its masts magically come down. So... And then, much like Sly Cooper 3, once its masts are down, you can either sink it with one final volley or board it. And the thing with boarding is that the enemy crew is not just going to sit there and let you board their ship. They're going to gun for you, which means you have these little mini cannons. I forget what they're called, but you have these guns that you can take out. They can take out certain members of the enemy crew before boarding the enemy ship. And then you can, using your assassin skills, you can quickly climb up to the top of your ship, basically to the crow's nest almost, and jump over to the enemy ship and assassinate whoever you want to assassinate. Now, whether or not you can actually have your entire crew board the ship, I don't know, because according to the developers, according to them, they say you're going to be able to do that, but again, it wasn't showcased in the demo, and I know I'm just going by the demo here, but at this point, that's really all I have to go on. Aside from the word of the developers, which, again, they've kind of stretched their capabilities in the past. But another feature that was showcased is the ability to come across treasure maps. And these maps are just kind of vague hints as to where to look for treasure. I mean, they give you a location, and then give you some landmark, and they tell you where the treasure is in relation to the landmark. So that seems like a fairly convenient way to do things. And the treasure that they uncovered in the demo is kind of like a blueprint for upgrading your ship. Like you collect the blueprint, and then you can actually buy the upgrade at a port. So at least that gives you some incentive to go seeking treasure. It's not like other Assassin's Creed games where you get treasure maps and then you go to seek out these treasure chests, but you really have no incentive to go seek out the treasure chest because your hub or your villa or whatever you want to call it already gives you enough income to where you don't actually have to go treasure hunting. But looks like in this game they kind of improved that in a sense, where going to look for these treasures actually makes you more powerful. There was also a storm in the demo, which, to be honest, the storms look more fleshed out than they did in Assassin's Creed 3. Not that they were bad in Assassin's Creed 3. The storms were actually some of the most exciting stuff in Assassin's Creed 3. But the thing with this is they can damage your ship, and they have these little water tornadoes. Not really whirlpools, but tornadoes that come towards you, and they can damage your ship. They can make you lose crew members, and they're bad news. But once you actually, the developer said you can actually use them to your advantage by luring your enemies into a storm, so that the storm will damage them. Now, how exactly you gauge when a storm will damage them and not you, I don't know. I mean, storms are, by their very nature, are very unpredictable, especially for a bunch of rum-drinking pirates. So, but what else? Oh, there was the what else? Yeah, I mean, there was the continuing use of the environment in the actual assassination bits. Like, you can hide in the grass, or you can hide in the trees, or you can hide in the bushes. But again, with the whole pirate theme, I mean, I think Assassin's Creed, ironically enough, is distancing itself more and more from the actual assassination aspect. They're trying to go for this kind of immersive open world experience, and assassination is really becoming kind of something you do on the side. But after Assassin's Creed Liberation, that might not be such a bad thing. What else? Oh, they kind of briefly touched upon the difference between the current gen and the next gen versions of Assassin's Creed, because it's kind of like a dual gen game. It's coming out for PS3 and Xbox 360, but it's also coming out for PS4 and Xbox One. It's also coming out for a variety of other platforms, but those are the big ones. So they basically said there's not really any difference in terms of content or gameplay, but the graphics, the big draw for the next gen version is that the graphics and the environment will be more fleshed out and be more immersive, they say. I mean, sails will flap, leaves, I mean wind will affect the environment, yada yada yada. And that's fine, but is that really worth the extra price point? I don't think so. Not if they're not going to include any extra content. And I really hope they don't. I really hope the world is not bigger on the PS4. This is just speaking from a guy who's not going to buy a next-gen console for a while. Because I don't want to be penalized just because I'm not rushing out to buy the next-gen console without a second thought. I mean, why would I do that? I mean, especially with the limited number of games coming out for each one. Granted, some of the games look really good, but I'm still satisfied with my PS3. So I'm actually kind of glad that there's not any additional content that they've spoken of, and if there is additional content that they haven't spoken of or that I haven't heard about, it must not be very significant, because Again, they haven't really mentioned it, or it hasn't really become widespread information at this point. But yeah, I hope Assassin's Creed 4 is as good as they're making it out to be. I mean, the hero doesn't look like a monosyllabic little pissant like Connor. The gameplay doesn't really look as restrictive. It seems like there's a lot to do. Oh, another thing I wanted to talk about, the crew. The crew is kind of vague in terms of how it actually comes into play, because they've said a variety of ways you can obtain new crew members is freeing prisoners who are about to be executed, going to pubs and bars and hiring people, or even conquering other ships and recruiting people from those ships to your own crew. And I'm not really sure. They've been kind of vague about how the crew actually comes into play. I mean, if you have more crew members, does that affect your performance in naval combat? I assume so. I mean, maybe your cannons reload faster, or maybe you have better turning speed with your sails. I mean, I don't really know how having more crew affects the performance of your ship, at least not in this game. I know how it affects the performance of your ship in real life, but whether or not that's going to translate into the game, I don't know. And even if it does, how big of an effect is it going to have? Yeah, they're boasting a lot of stuff that you're gonna be able to do, and they certainly seem confident with the amount of gameplay videos that they're showing off. But again, they did the same thing in Assassin's Creed 3, so I'm much like Arkham Origins. I have a wait-and-see attitude towards this one. So yeah, it looks good. I will give it that. It looks really good. And I actually kind of have more hope for this one, because I've always been kind of more interested in the Caribbean and the lawlessness, somewhat embellished lawlessness of the Caribbean. So yeah, it doesn't look bad. I mean, none of the Assassin's Creed games have ever looked bad. I mean, some of them have been bad, but yeah, I hope it lives up to the hype, or what hype there can be after the last few disappointing entries in the series. So yeah, go watch the gameplay video. It's awesome.